Life, death, rebirth. Despite meaning different things, they're all tied into this theme of the snow. But as beautiful or deadly as snow can be sometimes, it can also fall apart so very quickly. But what happens when you have snow that started off incredibly strong, but petered out near the end? Well, in real life, we call that a snowstorm, but it also exists in other forms, such as media. Clannad After Story is one of them. I have an interesting story with this series. The ending was the topic of one of the early episodes of the Mounty Presents, and yeah, it was not a good episode looking back on it. Outside of that, however, I also did countdowns on the series, and there's of course the reaction highlights series, which also didn't age well in some aspects. However, it was still fun to react to the show with my friends and my wife, shooting the shit in the background as I was going through each episode. But I think now is a good time to talk about this show under the TMP banner and give a proper explanation of why I didn't like this series, especially in comparison to its predecessor, Clannad. Also, spoiler warning. So After Story continues the, story of Tomoya's life after meeting Nagisa for the first time and showcases his relationship with her blossom into marriage, and then wilt with her giving birth and dying afterwards, resulting in Tomoya abandoning his kid for 5 years, and then right after making up for that mistake, watches this child die in the snow, and then he also dies before getting sent back in time to an alternate reality where Nagisa survives and they all get their happy ending. Also, I'm going to be interswapping the pronunciations of these characters because I don't know how the fuck they're actually supposed to be pronounced, and I don't really care because they're fictional fucking characters. Now, when the first few episodes of After Story, it felt like more of the same that Clannad had, and that's not a bad thing in theory. I mean, the cast was likable, the stories of each episode were sort of interesting, and they even had a set of episodes based around one of the characters where they get expanded upon and develop as characters, like in the first series. Sure, it wasn't as great as when Clannad did it, since the characters arc of that show were about more interesting characters than Sunahara was, but it still worked out pretty decently, at least to me. But little did I realize that at the time, it was the first chink in the armor that would eventually spread and destroy its quality. But after this character arc, we get several episodes that are just meh in quality, and present stories and characters that still aren't as interesting as what came before, such as dealing with 2 rival gangs and the story of a boy who was reincarnated into a cat to fulfill someone's wish.
I came here to grant you an imaginary wish.
What do you think this is, religion?
Oh boy, so now we're getting more into the supernatural element for a show that up to this point was generally grounded in reality. That's a red fucking flag. After that, however, we get some more episodes focused on the main couple adjusting to their adult lives, and it works decently, save for 12 and 13, which are really damn good episodes in terms of writing, characters, etc. Sure, the other episodes in between aren't exactly the best written episodes, but the characters were good, and I was hoping that the story would start to regain some of the steam it lost, and then episode 16 happened. After getting to see this character grow and develop over the course of 38 episodes, Nagisa dies. And the death stings because the show gave me a reason to care about this character and see her go through her own struggles, high points, and start her own family. So to see it all ripped away so easily, that hurts, and that makes for a good death scene. Make the audience care about the character you're gonna kill, and this show did a wonderful job with that. So if I'm praising episode 16, why did I say it started to peter out when we're near the end of the show? Well, the answer for that is simple. Because this is the turning point for the series, and where to me, everything slams into a fucking wall. Episode 17 jumps ahead 5 years into the future, and it is shown that after Nagisa died, Tomoya abandoned his daughter, and his arc to reconcile a bond with his daughter begins. I despise this decision so fucking much. This story expects me to buy that Tomoya, who has grown over the course of this series, and the last also, forged bonds with not only his friends, but his extended family, and was at his happiest, would throw it all away because Nagisa died, and did so for 5 years? No, I'm sorry, but that's a load of fucking horse shit. Look, I get grieving the loss of his wife. That's human, and maybe I can understand him not being able to form much of a connection with his daughter because of the similarity as well as her birth being responsible for Nagisa's death. But for 5 years... seriously, no, I can't buy that for even a minute. One of his friends or family should have called his ass out for that shit a lot sooner, not 5 years after the fact, especially during those essential years of that child's life. Editor's note, I was informed that this behavior is common in Japan, and while it does make a bit of sense, it's still fucking stupid to add to the story/character of Tomoya, at least to me. And even outside of that, even if it is a cultural thing, I'm still calling it out because it's a dumb fucking thing to do. Basically, even if it's a thing in Japan for people to do, it's still a dumb fucking thing to do, personally speaking. And from a writing perspective, which is what I'm judging this on, frankly, it's especially stupid because it goes against Tomoya's character. Alright, back to the video. Let me just get back into character here. And keep in mind, I am not angry so much at Tomoya for this decision. I'm angry at the writers for making such a dumbass decision like this and not thinking that this was a stupid idea. And sure, it might have been a thing in the source material, but if the source material had a character doing something this pants on head stupid and against his previously established character/personality, then maybe that's a sign you should go back to the fucking drawing board. And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with going back to the drawing board. Not everything in a draft goes into the final product. I and many others do that all the fucking time. And it's done so that the product is at its highest quality. Because if you don't go back to the drawing board, you get shit like this.
How ironic. My most hated character in video games is also a shitty final boss.
Or in terms of a product released for consumers to buy, this imbecilic fucking plot point. But, even if I push that aside, even if the rest of the episodes don't get much better. 18 and 19 is where they try and redeem Tomoya's dad. 5 years too late, frankly. And the only highlight is at the end of episode 18, where Tomoya and Ushio hug, and Tomoya moves on from Nagisa fully so that he can be a true dad to his daughter. And then they utterly forgot about this bit by 21 because Ushio dies from the disease her mom got, and now Tomoya calls out for Nagisa to save their kid before he too dies. This death, by the way, lasts for a couple of minutes, because then the orbs reset everything after Nagisa's death, and Tomoya wakes up in a different timeline where his wife and kids survive. So basically, the supernatural shit saves the day. Fuck off! The supernatural element is easily one of the worst elements of this show. It makes such a simple story unnecessarily complicated, and it took me out of the immersion of this somewhat grounded world this show took place in. And sure, the original series also had the supernatural element too, and I didn't like it there either, but it was also barely used as much, and even when they did use it, like with the whole Foucault's Coma Spirit thing, it also wasn't that good. But unlike After Story, it was forgotten about after that arc's end. Gee, it's almost like it was a waste of time or something and should have been scrapped before it got into the final product. Fucking shocker. But honestly, that's probably the biggest issue I had with the original Clannad, the Foucault shit, as well as the supernatural element. And even then, like I said earlier, they kind of forgot about it for the original series. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Well, the original Clannad had sprinkles of the supernatural shit, and it wasn't executed well there either, personally. After Story gives it much more focus/emphasis, to the point of it being integral to the ending of the series, and it's not good. Which is a shame, because if you took out that element from both the original and After Story, you got a really great story and cast to work with here. But by giving it more focus in After Story, it drug the quality down hard, because as said previously, it makes the story unnecessarily complicated, not even that good by the way, immersion breaking, and its execution is, well, abysmal, to put it lightly. But I've already bitched about the ending enough times in that fucking unpopular anime opinions video, as well as hinted at in other videos, so let's just move on. What else is wrong here? Well, let's address the scene that occurs before the supernatural reset shit. Ushio's death. Now, on the surface, this is a tragic moment alongside the death of her mother Nagisa. However, the more I looked into it, the more I realized how this death does not work as well as Nagisa's. And that is because when watching it, one question came to my mind. How much of this death works because Ushio is the last connection to Nagisa Tomoya has left in this world, and how much does it work because it's the death of a character the audience got to see grow and develop over the course of the series? And that's when it hit me. This death only hit so hard for me on my initial viewing and created that initial cringy screaming on my end. Because of her connection to Nagisa, and not because it was the death of a character I grew to like over the course of the show. If you took out the relation and only showed some of the episodes Ushio was in, would the death hit as hard? To me, no it wouldn't. It would suck, sure, but it wouldn't leave as much of a note on my heart that Nagisa's death did. And sure, she's a 5-year-old child, they don't have much of a personality. But then the question becomes, why kill her at all? It's the equivalent of killing a cat that your deceased significant other had. It sucks because it's connected to a thing you cared about, but on its own, it doesn't leave much of an impact for me, and that's a fucking shame, because I can tell they tried so hard to make the audience feel sad for what's going on in this scene. The beautiful cinematography and animation, the vocal performances being great, and the music being some of the best on the fucking soundtrack. But all that effort goes to waste, unfortunately, if I don't care as much about this character, and that's exactly what happened here. Also, considering that Ushio's death in the visual novel is only in the bad ending, it makes me wonder, why did they bother combining both endings into the anime adaptation instead of just going with the good ending? I don't even think Danganronpa the animation had the bad ending and the good ending combined into one. Like, that's just weird. And sure, if they would only have the good ending, the dark shit we'd get from episode 17 onward wouldn't exist. But honestly, what's the harm in that? The stuff wasn't that well written anyways, well, personally speaking. So it's like, if it could make the show better, why not take it? I don't know. I know it's a me thing, but I just don't think the dark stuff was well written, so if it was taken out, I think it could make the story better anyways. And I'm not even saying that your story sucks if it has drama in it. Far from it. I'm just saying, the way it's written in this show, it fucking sucks more dicks than the amount you'd see on Pornhub, and I think the dark/drama sections need to be written much better if it was absolutely essential to be included in this series. Basically a case of, this shit really needed to go back to the drawing board / needed a revision before it was put in the final product. Actually, now that I think about it, they didn't just combine both endings for this adaptation, they also took out several routes that were in the original visual novel. So it's like, if they already made some pretty decent / big changes, what's the harm in taking out the bad ending sections? Fuck it. Hell, if anything, you could have a route that makes it stand out from the visual novel, but I digress. Actually, now that I think about it, if they did incorporate those scrap character arcs, it might have actually improved the cast of the series, because with the exception of Tomoya and Nagisa, the cast of After Story don't really get expanded upon or are as interesting as they were in the original Clannad. Sure, the show is 100% gorgeous to look at, and its animation is 100% fluid. The music is fantastic, even if it is just taken from the games, and there are some decent episodes in this series. The potential was 100% here for me to enjoy the series, but what drug it down to a show I didn't like was the story, the supernatural element playing a major focus, the much flatter cast, the character arcs not being as good as the original, the ending fucking sucking, the darker / dramatic elements falling flat on its face due to bad writing and execution, etc. What a fucking shame. But that's obviously just me. I may not have enjoyed it, but I got no issue with you if you enjoyed the show. It just means that you found something that I didn't with this show, and honestly, that's fantastic. I legit mean that. More power to you. As for me, it's time to dissipate this blizzard that is my review of Clannad After Story. So until we meet again, I'm David Grimm, and thank you for watching.